Welcome to another episode from HenRefurb. This episode I'm going to strip down and restore all 4 leaf springs, so stay tuned. I can't remember which way round this goes, but it doesn't really matter because there's a suspension link at one end and just I think maybe a brass bush at the back end. This appears to have helper springs on it. I'm not sure if those are standard or not. I'm sure I'll find out at some point. There's just a bolt through the middle of all the leaves holding it together, and then that just stopping them from separating that way. So hopefully I can get all of that apart. Wow, that's a cheap pile of rubbish. Nasty wear on these bearings at the ends of the spring. These are the bits that mount onto the chassis. I'm not entirely sure what on earth I'm going to do about that, but I think those are going to have to be remade. With the spring leaves apart, they've been through the parts washer, so they're all free of grease and grime and all that. I'm now putting each leaf through the sandblaster one by one to get them all spotless. This is the leaf spring, approximately reassembled, again having been blasted. I've come across an issue. Well, I haven't come across it. I knew this was an issue, but here's the thing. So, these are the spring shackles that attach the rear end of the spring to the chassis. And these pins and these sockets are completely and utterly worn out, which means that, well, we can't use these anymore. So, they need more than the amount of work I can be bothered to do at the moment on them to make them usable again. So I think the easiest option for now is to just do away with this design, come up with a new design that's more like what you'd get on a modern vehicle, and you know, it'll look near enough identical, no one's going to notice, and it will do absolutely perfectly for the time being. And then I will keep these to one side, and at some point in the future, if I'm feeling slightly mad, I might have them completely remanufactured, or something along those lines. But for the time being, I'm going to go through these leaves and just brush off all the sharp edges on everything, just to tart it all up, and then they'll have a quick clean down, and I'm going to put some etch primer on them to keep the rust in, or out rather. Now that those are all cleaned up and all the edges are nice and smooth, I will put some primer on them. I've decided now to take apart the second leaf spring, ready to do the exact same job. That there is the top of the centre retaining bolt that goes all the way through all these leaves, and that there would you believe it? That's supposed to be a nut. There's not much left of that. It's almost as small as the actual bolt itself. I'm hoping for one of two things. Either I can file that so it just touches the thread and then I'll hit it with a punch and hopefully it'll split off. Either that, or I might be able to get a spanner on it once I've created two flats and actually make it come loose. Ah, well, that worked. It both came loose and split what's left of that nut off. I can't believe that was so rusted out. What you didn't see on the last spring was the removal of this bush here, or pin rather. This is a try-on shackle pin. So what I'll do is I'll remove that now the same way I did on the other one. Pretty tight. It's been in there nearly 90 years. There it is, looking completely and utterly worn to nothing. So I didn't show it on camera, but I had a bit of paint left in the gun, so instead of wasting it I decided to stick the spring back together and give it a quick blow over. It needs a few more coats yet, but it looks quite nice. It's real shiny. It's going to look great when it's got some more paint on it. Isn't that right, Doris? So now I'm going to dismantle the rear axle, take the springs off it at least, and have a look at whether I need to take the wheels off and decide how I clean the axle up, whether I strip it apart and all that. Now the rear springs look to be in pretty good condition. They just need a good strip down and a clean repaint. The only downside is there's a hell of a lot of leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 leaves on each spring. That's 30 leaves I've got sandblasted just on the rear alone, and I've still got one of the front ones to go. Joy. Obviously without the springs on it the axle's dropped, so I need to make sure that that's not going to leak oil all over the floor. Well, that's the rear springs split apart finally. I'm probably going to have to replace all the screws and stuff on those because they were a bit knackered, but that's no big deal. They're just so flaming heavy, it's ridiculous. I think now I'm going to just scrape all the crud off the leaves individually, just to prepare them for sandblasting basically, so I don't get too much grease and stuff in the actual sandblasting tent. I'm doing a little bit of work now on all of the little fixings that are attached to the leaves. So any of the little U-bolt screws, the tubes, the nuts, the bolt that goes through the middle of the spring and holds it all together, any bits like that. I'm just cleaning them up and working out which bits I'm going to need to replace and which bits I can fix. Handily, I managed to find a 5/16 UNF die nut, which means that I've been able to clean up a few of the threads on the nut that bolts all of the leaves together. Or rather bolt. Anyway, I'll show you what I've been doing. So here's a pile fresh out of the parts washer. That's the bolt that goes through the through all the leaves, you can see the head is in need of some serious cleanup. That's the slot head for a screwdriver, and the thread is just chewed up at the end and in need of a good old clean. That one's not too bad. One of them was really bad, but I fixed that already. That's the try-on shackle bearing pin thing. I'm just cleaning all of these up, labelling them and putting them to one side now, and maybe in a few years I might get back to fixing those. These are the screws for the U-bolt alignment bracket things, and the corresponding nuts, and that's a nut for that bolt. These are knackered, and there's one over here in there is actually bent from the other spring, so they'll all need replacing. And these are supposed to be tubes, and you know there's only sort of one on each spring that's still actually a tube, so I'll measure that up and order a load of that and just replace it all, I think. There we go, that has a usable head again, and if it shows up ever, oh there you go, nice thread. I'm just going to double check that the thread works. Well, actually the thread's not that nice, I don't know if you can see, but it's mangled at the end, so there's no way you'll ever get a nut on that. And that now fits the nut with ease. The time has come once again for sandblasting. Since you last saw the tent, it got in a bit of a state from the wind, and now I've built a giant windbreak to keep it under control. Seems to be working. And I had to tape all the sides back up once again, but that's fine. It's dry now, and I've got lots of dry sand, and the sun's out for a while. So here's the first of the rear leaf springs, all split up, ready to be done. And then I've got the other one, and then the other front one to do, and then all the bits and bobs. So that's going to keep me busy for a while. I'm not going to bore you too much with videos of me doing it, because I think you probably get the picture by now. Alright, well here's an update for you. I've sandblasted 10 leaves so far, out of 40. 40. That's how many I've got to go. I've still got all of that to do. I have an entire rear spring as well, but it's going to have to go on hold because I was sat in my hot sunny tent and I turned round and found that this had happened. So those two patches there are sand that was drying in the hot sun. But now it's just a patch of sodden mess. And the tent has just filled up with water again, all the sand is waterlogged. And I've still got 5 leaves to go on that spring. I was halfway through and I realised it was chucking it down. You really could not make that stuff up. Every single time I've done any sandblasting outside, regardless of what the weather report says, it's chucked it down on the tent and wrecked it. So I was planning on doing it all day today and tomorrow, but now that's going to have to be cancelled because I can't blast waterlogged sand. The 10 leaves that I did do, I've just cleaned up and deburred all the edges so there's no sharp bits on them, and now I'm going to get some primer on them. I'm trying to get this done really quickly given the weather situation because I don't want those to rust up after having spent all morning working on them. Here is the first rear spring, sandblasted, polished, primed and temporarily reassembled. It got really late, but I'm pleased to announce that today's work is complete. Look at that. Next up, painting it. I'm pleased, all 15 leaves done. The only leaf spring I've got left now is one of the front ones. There's 10 leaves in total, but I've done the eyelets at each end of the front one already, which means that everything else will fit in the box sandblaster, so I don't need to worry about the weather. I just can't quite reach the eyelets when I'm in the box because it's right up in the corner, so yeah, almost there. I am finally down to the last few tiny little bits of sandblasting on the leaf springs. 1, 2, 3, 4 leaves, 2 brackets and some pins and a bolt. Oh, and the nut. It has taken hours and hours. Well, actually, it's taken days, and there have been, well, it was 50 leaves in total to do, and all the brackets and bits and bobs, so these are the last bits to do and restore, and then I can put all the spring packs back together and finally paint them in their gloss top coat. Cannot wait to get this one out of the way. It has been tedious as anything. Well, I've tidied up the spray tent a bit, so I've got room now this time to work around. When I did the front axle it was a pain because I didn't have anywhere near enough room because I had all the other axle bits and wheels and stuff all in the way, but I've got room to work now. However, tricky setup. I want to be able to spray all of this in one go without having to pick them up and turn them over, specifically these 2 rear springs. They are mentally heavy, so I've got this end on a rod through the spring eye, which means that I can paint underneath it. That side I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to touch, obviously won't be able to get paint on the bit that's touching the cardboard, but I'll touch that up later. I can just, touch the end up another time easily enough. And these are so damn heavy, I don't know how I'm going to look after them without scratching them once I have actually painted them, but I think I'm going to have to cross that bridge when I get there. I will do whatever I can to keep them as safe as possible and away from damage, but they are so heavy. Anyway, time to stick some gloss black on them. Well, that went a lot better than it did the other. What on earth is on my face? Oh dear. Well, the spray paint went a lot better than it did the other day. It was going through the gun a lot easier. I'll clean this up and then I'll take you in there once the cloud's gone to have a quick peek. Here's a load of hard evidence that I have finally done all 4 springs. The front spring there, the 2 rear springs. These are yet to have another coat, but they are looking rather lovely, if I dare say so myself. I'm about to mix up a load of paint and do another coat on the leaf springs. I'm also going to do a little bit of paint on the axle, just another coat underneath to thicken it up a bit. Okay, that is the leaf springs done. Front's there, 2 rears, and there's a few brackets dotted around here and there. You got to have a look, a bit of a close-up on this. You might even be able to see the camera in the shot. Absolutely lovely. They've got such a deep shine to them. I'm really pleased. You know, up the sides and just lovely glossy finish. They were absolutely horrible before, so I'm very happy with that. That, of course, brings us to the end of this episode. It was a long one. It was a hell of a lot of work, and I don't want to have to do all of that ever again because that was too much. But I'm really happy it's done. So, if you've got any questions or suggestions, pop them in the comments section below. I'm interested to know what people's opinions are, if you know anything about greasing of leaf springs, specifically when they're from 1931. So I would be interested to hear your thoughts on that if you've got any. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Next episode, I think, on the leaf springs, we'll be finishing up all the bracketry, making any new parts I need to make, and working on the new shackle project. So I'm working on designing and building a new set of shackles for the spring to replace the old ones temporarily because they are knackered, as you saw earlier on in this video. So yeah, see you next time.